For this demonstration video, I'm going to show you guys how to start the painting. We are going to paint the construction paper first, and then we'll move on to the plants, the planters, the rocks, and then the background will be the last thing that we paint. So, go ahead, grab your palette. You should still have that red deep color from our sketchbook exercises that we did. Open up your palette. Now, if your paint is dry, then that means that you did not put enough water in that paint well to keep that paint wet. So if your paint is completely dry, or maybe it's drying out, what I want you guys to do is go ahead and take your number 6 round brush. That's the largest of the round brushes. Take that cap off. Put it in your bag and zip that bag closed so that cap does not fall out again. If you lose those caps on the floor, they're really hard to find. Take that round brush and go ahead and put it in your bucket of clean water and add about 3 to 4 brushfuls of clean water into that paint well with the red paint. That will hopefully help it to start to rehydrate while I'm talking to you guys about what we're going to do with the construction paper and getting it ready to go. So maybe by the time we're finished with this discussion, the paint will be rehydrated. So again, this will be a good lesson. If your paint did dry out, then it just means that you didn't put enough water in it. If this was, a Friday to a Monday and we're doing this part of the project on a Monday, that's something that might be a little hard to avoid, just because with weekends, obviously it's longer and you're not here on the weekend to rehydrate the paint. But you want to make sure that at the end of every class period, just, add about, it's going to be different for everybody, but maybe add anywhere between 3 to 4 brushfuls of clean water to your paint wells, just so that way it doesn't dry out. Now, if you're talking about mixtures of paint, like what we're going to be doing here pretty soon, you may not want to add 3 to 4 brushfuls of water to those paint wells, because not only are you going to, add water to it, but you may lighten up the color too much, so change it too much. So, that's one of the things you kind of have to deal with watercolors. All right, so what we're going to do, first thing you need to think about when you're looking at your painting and where to start is, where is your light coming from? So this is the very, very important step of any painting or drawing. So if you're portraying anything from direct observation, or even if you're using a reference photograph for a painting, you need to be aware of where your light's coming from. So your light might be coming from the back, your light might be coming from the right side of your still life, or your light might be coming from the left side of your still life. Everybody's going to be in a little bit of a different situation. My light is coming from the left side, so that means the left side of my construction paper is going to be the lightest, and it's going to get darker as it moves over to the right side. Again, you're going to be different than me, so make sure you are doing what makes sense to you and your still life. So you're not necessarily, you should not be copying what I am doing. Now, obviously, we have cast shadows that are going across our paper. We're not going to be addressing those yet. That'll be a different day, but we are going to be painting this entire paper area with our red washes. So you will be painting over those areas, not around them, because we want to make sure that we have the color of the red construction paper established. Now you will notice on this video, again, this is the same problem I had with the other ones for this project, is that it does skip around a little bit. So please just be patient. I know it can be a little bit of annoying to deal with, but I often at times have problems with these video recordings. So the first thing we want to do before we start anything is to erase over these pencil lines to lighten them up. So what we don't want to see at the end of this painting are pencil lines. If we do see them, it's going to make it look like our objects are outlined. And you guys might have learned in your previous art classes and Drawing Painting 1 and Fine Art 1 is that outlines do not exist in nature. If you do have outlines around objects, then that tends to flatten them out and make them look fake or flat. Our objective for this project is to give these objects form and to make them look as natural or as real as possible. So we want to lighten up our pencil line. So just take your pink eraser. And a lot of times I just kind of lay it flat on top of my drawing and I just kind of rub it and kind of drag it across my drawing. I want to erase a good bit of this, but I will still see the drawing even after I erase it. I just want to take off sort of those loose and dark layers of the pencil. Now your drawing should be a lot lighter than mine to begin with, just because you guys did use a 4H pencil and you hopefully drew very lightly. For me, I used a regular pencil and I drew pretty dark just because I needed it to show up on the video screen. So I'm still going to try to lighten this up, again, because I did things the wrong way and there was a reason for that. You're still going to see my pencil lines through this painting. So if anything, it's a good lesson in what happens if you do the wrong thing. Well, we, of course, know that I did that just so that way my drawing showed up well on the video. So just go ahead and go through. You're going to go over top everything. Just lining it up. You'll still see those pencil lines. You don't want to erase it away completely. So once you're finished with that, again, it's going to be all about where your light's coming from. Again, your light's either going to be coming from the left side, from behind your still life objects, or from the right side. Mine is going to be coming from the left. So that means that my lightest value on my construction paper is going to be on the left side. In the middle of the construction paper is where I'm going to have my medium value. And then the darker value is going to be on the right side, opposite side of my light source. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a flat watercolor brush, and hopefully you have one. You grabbed one before you sat down. You can use either a 1/2 inch or a 3/4 inch flat brush. That seems to work out fine, but I do think it's helpful to have that round brush handy for any of those tight areas because we will be painting around the pots. So those areas might be a little hard to get with the flat brush, so you can use the round brush for that. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to wet the entire area of the construction paper on my painting with just clean water. And there's a reason for that. I want to do this wash of color over my construction paper on wet paper. So I'm going to go ahead and paint over the entire area of the construction paper with just clean, plain water. And I'm just going to use that flat brush because it gets the job done faster, a lot faster than that round brush would. You want to be very careful that you do not get this water that you're painting down in any area that you do not want to have that red paint. So make sure that you're still taking your time. A big mistake that you could make is just thinking, oh, this is just plain water. I don't need to be really careful with this. You do need to be careful with it because as you should have learned on the sketchbook practice is that the paint will go wherever the paper is wet. So if you accidentally get like part of the pot, or let's say, for example, you get some water painted down past the edge of your paper, that paint will go there. And there's nothing you can really do to stop it other than just letting your paper dry and then going back and re-wetting those areas again. And that's going to take too long. So take your time. Turn your board if it makes it easier for you to get to some of these areas. For most of you guys, for all of you guys, your paper is largely in the middle and the bottom of your composition. So if you have to, you could flip it upside down or sideways, whatever makes it easier for you to get to those areas. Again, you should have your board sort of laying on your lap and up against the table so that it's sitting up as much as possible. You should never be working on a drawing or a painting while it's flat on your table. The only reason why I have mine flat on the table is because I need to record my painting. But if this was something that I was doing for myself and not recording, then I definitely would have this propped up. So again, just take your time to get around those areas. You need to be very careful that you're not getting water in places that you do not want the red paint. And again, if you're getting if you have some tight areas to work around and that flat brush isn't working for you, go ahead and use your round brush for those areas. Once you got that water on your paint or on the construction paper, then what you should do is grab your sketchbook, and you can kind of set your painting off to the side if you want to, but grab your sketchbook. I do not recommend putting your sketchbook on top of your paper or on top of your project like I did. That's a good way to get paint somewhere where you don't want it to go, but I'm sort of I don't have as much space as you guys do at the table to work with. So grab your sketchbook, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to make a light, a medium, and a dark wash of the red. We're going to make that ahead of painting, so that way sort of a lot of the work is done before we start actually laying the paint down on our painting. So what I'm going to do is just start with a little bit of the red paint. I'm still got the flat brush in my hand. I'm going to grab a little bit of that red paint with my flat brush, and I am going to put that in a new well on my palette. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to then go to my water bucket, grab a brush full of water, and mix that in with that red paint. And so where that gets me, I don't know. So this might end up being my medium value. This might end up being my light value, might end up being my dark value. But either way it goes, I want to create, again, 3 different mixtures, a light, a medium, and a dark. And then, of course, I have even the straight paint that I can utilize if I need to. So I'm going to continue to do this, making different mixtures, and I'm going to test these mixtures out on my sketchbook just to see what the color looks like, because it is really hard to kind of tell the difference between these paint mixtures when you're looking at your palette. So that's why it's good to have your sketchbook near you. I always have a scrap piece of paper or my sketchbook near me when I'm painting with watercolors, because I like to test out my colors first in my sketchbook before I put it onto my painting. You put it on your painting, there's really nothing you can do after it's on there. So I like to test it out first in the sketchbook. So keep working on these mixtures. If you're not sure if your light is light enough, or if your medium's medium enough, or your dark is dark enough, what you can do is compare it to my painting that I have up on the board in the classroom. The painting that you see in the classroom is the painting that I am currently working on in the video. So again, hopefully if you guys had dry paint to begin with today, hopefully your paint had enough time to soak up some of that water that you put in it at the beginning of the class period. If not, it will gradually soak in that water, but it does take time. And I am purposely keeping these mixtures that I'm making near my straight red paint, so that way all these colors are near each other, so it's easy to just kind of go from one paint well to another. I will eventually add different colors in the other paint wells, but not right now. And again, you can just see on my sketchbook, I'm just creating different swatches here. I'm just testing these out. So, by the time I finish this, again, I'll have a light, medium, and a dark, and then I can also use paint from that straight red paint well, and I can use that for something even darker if I need it. But the darkest that we're going to get right now is just basically the straight red. All right, so once you get your mixtures done and you're satisfied with them and you're ready to go, now we're ready to start adding color to our painting. Now, first time you do this can always be scary, okay? Now, again, remember, I want these three values, my light, my medium, and my dark, to blend together. So I want to try to make this as seamless as possible, which can be a difficult thing to achieve with watercolor paint. So what I'm going to do is, now some of my paper might have, it dried out a little bit since last time I wet it, but I'm going to go ahead and start. Now, unlike my sketchbook, like when I did that gradated value scale, I am going to actually start painting my lightest value first. And the reason for that is because, and there's a couple reasons why I have for that, is because I do have such a large area to paint. Plus, I have all of these objects that I need to work around. Now, if this was a smaller area and I didn't have all these objects to kind of paint around, I probably would start with my dark and then go towards my lightest. So I'm going to start with my lightest first. I'm just going to paint it in that area that I feel that it belongs. So again, my light's coming from the left, so that's why I'm starting on the left side. If your lightest area is on the right, you should be doing this on the right side. If your lightest area is coming from behind your still life, then you need to start your light at the top of your paper. And if you look, I am painting directly on top of where those cast shadows are going to go. Those cast shadows are on top of the red paper, so I need to have that red down first, and then I'll be using different colors for the shadows on top of that. Now you can see, I can still see my lines for where those cast shadows need to go. Watercolor paint is transparent, so I'll still see those lines and shapes, so I won't lose those. Now, while you're painting down your watercolor, you will probably notice a little bit of patchiness to it, or kind of like a water stain look in some areas. Do not let that bother you. I think that's one of the characteristics of watercolor paint that makes it so cool to look at, is all those things that the paint and the water do to each other. How you can kind of get some shapes that form. You can see brush strokes in areas. So I would not let that bother you. I'd kind of let those things happen naturally, as I do think that they add a lot of interest to the painting itself. So again, if you're dealing with some tight areas, like you're kind of working around some leaves or petals, feel free to grab that round brush and use that to kind of help you work around those areas. Now again, some of my paper has dried, so I'm going through, before I start adding color or paint to the area, I'm going back to my water bucket and just adding more water down on my paper so I can get things to blend a little bit better. And because I've already started painting, you can tell over here to the left of the screen is that my paint water is a red color. So it's not clean anymore, but the only color that I'm using right now is red, so it's not going to hurt to have that red tint to my water bucket. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of re-wet this whole middle section, so that way I can get the light value to blend in with my medium value a little bit better. So that's why right now this middle section looks lighter than the light section, is because I'm just using my red tinted water to re-wet the area. Now, one of the things you'll notice, and I'm doing it right now, as soon as you start adding that next darker value, it can be a little bit of a shock. I don't want that to bother you. Okay, the first time you lay down like a new color or a new value can be like, oh, like it looks wrong. It's not working. Give it time. Okay, so whenever you do that, it's always a little bit of a surprise or a shock. just keep working on it. As you can see, I've already kind of worked that out. And again, I'm working on adding more medium value into the middle of my painting. Again, it's not working right now, but I'm not worried about it because you know what? I'll get it worked out. As I work over it, it'll blend in. And the longer that paint kind of sits on top of that wet paper, it will blend out on its own naturally. So I'm going to keep building up this medium red in the middle section of my paper. The other thing that you may not have noticed is that a lot of times what I like to do is I'll take, so for example, when I was painting down that light red down first, I took it a little bit farther than what I needed it to be. And then when I add that medium value to blend out to it, I overlap it where those two colors would meet. And that helps blend things out. So I overlap where those colors meet. So I'll do the same thing with this medium value. I'm going to take this medium red a little bit farther than what I need it. So then when I start adding that dark red, I'm going to overlap it with the medium, and that will help me blend it out. Again, you're going to notice that because we're working on such a large area, you're probably going to have to re-wet this section of your paper. And I'm noticing that the part right here on my far right side is drying out because it's been a while since I wetted initially. So I'm going to have to spend some time re-wetting this area before I paint down that dark color. And that's what I'm going to do right now. So again, it's going to look a little weird to begin with. It's going to look light, medium, and then light again. But it's only going to look light here where it should look dark because I need a re-wet. And I'm re-wetting with my dirty red paint water. Again, be very careful about where you're even painting the water because again, you will learn the hard way sometimes, and it's important to make mistakes because those are the lessons that you learn. But you want to make sure that you keep that paper wet where you want the paint to go. So you don't want to overpaint on anything that you don't want that red paint to go. And again, just kind of talking about mistakes in general, mistakes, it's important to make mistakes. Again, that's how you're going to learn. You won't learn anything if you don't make mistakes. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. And I don't see mistakes as a bad thing. I see mistakes as creative opportunities. I could tell you stories about projects that I've done where I've made major mistakes to them. And because of those mistakes, I had to react to them in a creative way. And because of that mistake, I came up with a solution that made my project look even better than if it went the right, if it went well with no mistakes made at all. So I think in an odd way, in a funny way, mistakes actually make pieces look better. And then you get to take all the credit for it. But, mistakes are great because it does it forces you to think creatively, think outside the box, use those problem-solving skills. So don't ever be afraid to make a mistake, and don't ever feel bad if you do make a mistake. And if you do, no big deal. Just keep fighting on and figure it out, and you'll come up with a solution that'll probably make your project look better. All right, so what I'm doing now is I'm adding that darkest red that I have mixed up over here on my on the opposite side, basically of where my light source is. And I'm going to build that dark red up. Now, I'm just guessing, and I know this for sure, that I don't have my dark red as dark as what it needs to be. And I'm okay with that for now. So this is just a start. And again, this is just like, when you start drawing something. You got to draw something down first, and then you got to play with it to get it to that point where it's finished or it's in a good place. So I'm going to just get the dark red that I have established on here. Now I can see, once I get that all painted on there, I can see how all of this looks together. So how my light and my medium, my dark red look together. And then I can assess how far I need to push it. And now I can go back in and add more color or value. I can darken up areas where I need to. But it's a lot easier for me to see it now, what I need to do, than what it looked like when it was just plain white paper. So again, I think the hardest part of a project sometimes is just getting started on it. And, and when I start on things, I don't always know what I'm doing, and I'm okay with it. I want to just have a really good idea of what I want to do, but I have to go in with an open mind and be open to things happening, be open to making mistakes, and be open to sort of critically looking at my work and assessing what it needs to happen to it to make it better. And if you've noticed, ever since I started painting, as soon as I picked up a paintbrush, I haven't stopped yet. So I've been working on this pretty consistently, and I will continue to do that. So I noticed I need to kind of make the area kind of in the back just a little bit darker. So again, I'm just adding more washes on top. And again, if I notice that, when I'm putting down some more color onto my painting, if it's not blending like the way that I need it to, all that I need to do is just re-wet that paper just to get it to blend out a little bit more. So I'm just going to continue to build up that dark red. It's important to have a good amount of contrast between your light and your dark. And again, contrast refers to the differences between the elements of design. So right now we're talking about color and value. So I'm just trying to build up that dark red. Now, the other thing you got to consider too with watercolor paint is that watercolor paint lightens up a little bit as it dries. So I always like to take my paint color and value just a little bit too far, because I know that when it dries, it's going to kind of lighten up by like a value or two. And personally, I like a lot of contrast in my work, so I'm always looking for a lot of pop. So I'm just going to keep working on this. And again, you'll notice there's some variation even within my dark and my medium and light, and I'm okay with that. That's one of the characteristics with watercolor paint. So I don't try to fight it. I used to try to fight it, but it was a losing battle. So I just decided to let the watercolor paint do what it was going to do. And it turned out that it's a good thing to kind of let the paint and the medium do what's in its nature to do. I think when you kind of let the medium do what it's going to do, you end up with some really cool things that happen. I think when you try to control the medium too much, it just fights you. And who wants to fight? Not me. All right, so I'm just going to keep building this up, looking for areas that need to be fixed. But that's a good start. Am I finished? No. I will definitely go back through and add some more punch here and there, some more contrast. But I think it's a good start for now. So I'm going to give you guys what time we have left to kind of get a good amount of paint established on your construction paper. And then the next step is to move on to the plants.